Have a look at this image. On December 18th, 2022, at the entire world bowed before one man, Lionel Messi, with the Golden World Cup trophy in his hands and the royal bish draped over his shoulders. He officially stepped into the temple of immortal kings. A perfect ending, a living god of modern football. But rewind the tape of history 25 years. In a small, dimly lit room in Rosario, Argentina, there were no camera flashes and no cheers. There was only an 11-year-old boy, frail from malnutrition, gritting his teeth as he injected a growth hormone needle into his own body. Every night, for years. Doctors once shook their heads and said, "This boy will probably never grow taller than 4 feet 7 inches." How did a child carrying a medical sentence, a boy who nearly had to give up football because his family could not afford his treatment, overturn every limit imposed by fate and become the king of the beautiful game? Welcome to Beyond the Pitch, where we uncover the untold story of Lionel Messi's journey from injections in the darkness to an eternal throne. In the port city of Rosario, Argentina, during the 1990s, there was a boy who was always the smallest person in every crowd, yet the only one who could make everyone look up whenever the ball rolled at his feet. People called him La Pulga, meaning the little flea. That boy was Lionel Messi. At the age of 9, playing for Newell's Old Boys youth team, Leo was already a phenomenon. He could dribble past an entire opposing team, leaving defenders twice his size completely bewildered. Everyone believed Rosario was nurturing a prodigy who would one day take the world by storm. Then, at the age of 11, reality struck like a bucket of ice-cold water. Leo's body suddenly stopped developing. After a series of medical tests, doctors delivered the diagnosis. He suffered from growth hormone deficiency. It was a rare condition that prevented bones and essential muscles from developing normally. At the time, that medical verdict felt like a death sentence for the young boy's football dream. Without treatment, Leo would likely reach a maximum height of only around 4 feet 7 inches. Imagine a professional footballer with the stature of a primary school child. It seemed impossible. The only way to save his future was through daily injections of synthetic growth hormone. But the treatment cost $900 a month, an enormous amount, far beyond the reach of a working-class family in Argentina, especially as the country's economy stood on the brink of collapse. Every night, the 11-year-old boy had to pick up a syringe and inject himself in the leg. One leg tonight, the other tomorrow, repeating the process through pain and loneliness. At first, his parents administered the injections, but eventually Leo learned to do it himself. He accepted the physical pain because he understood that it was the only thread connecting him to football. Yet the real tragedy arrived when the family's insurance provider stopped covering the treatment. His club, Newell's Old Boys, refused to help. Messi's father knocked on River Plate's door, one of Argentina's biggest clubs. They were astonished by Leo's talent, but the moment they saw the medical bills, they too shook their heads and walked away. No one in Argentina was willing to risk investing in a frail child whose future remained a huge question mark. Messi's dream slowly faded into the darkness of Rosario. Then, at the very moment of greatest despair, when every door at home had slammed shut, a faint ray of light appeared from across the Atlantic. In 2000, an invitation for a trial with FC Barcelona arrived like a gamble of destiny. The Messi family gathered their remaining savings and flew to Spain. In Catalonia, Barcelona's sporting director at the time, Charlie Rexach, was stunned the first time he watched the 13-year-old play. He immediately realized that this was not an ordinary talent. This was a once-in-a-century genius. Yet Barcelona's board hesitated. Signing a foreign player at just 13 years old was unprecedented, not to mention the enormous medical expenses the club would have to cover. The waiting dragged on for months, and Messi's father began to lose patience. He delivered an ultimatum: either sign a contract or the family would return to Argentina. During a hurried meeting at a restaurant, afraid of losing a priceless gem, Charlie Rexach did something that would become legendary. He grabbed a paper napkin from the table and wrote a commitment to sign Messi right there on it. That fragile napkin became the birth certificate of a legend, a lifeline that changed young Leo's destiny forever. But paradise did not come easily. Leaving Rosario for Barcelona came at a heavy price: profound loneliness. The new environment felt completely unfamiliar. The Catalan language sounded strange, and strict FIFA regulations prevented Leo from playing official matches during the early period. Worse still, because life was so difficult, Messi's mother and siblings had to return to Argentina. In a quiet apartment in Barcelona, only Leo and his father remained. At La Masia, Messi was so shy and thin that teammates such as Gerard Piqué and Cesc Fabregas reportedly thought he could not speak. He rarely talked, rarely socialized, and simply trained in silence. Whenever he returned to his room, the first thing Leo did was quietly slip into the bathroom and continue injecting growth hormone into his legs so that no one would see. There were nights when the 13-year-old cried into his pillow, desperately missing his mother and his home. Yet not once did he tell his father that he wanted to quit. He channeled every ounce of pain and loneliness into his feet, waiting for the day he could explode onto the scene and prove to the world that they had been right to believe in him. After years of perseverance, the medical miracle finally arrived, though in a very special way. Thanks to regular hormone treatments combined with La Masia's strict nutritional program, Messi's physique improved significantly. He eventually reached a height of 5 feet 6.5 inches. Still shorter than most professional footballers, but Messi transformed that disadvantage into his ultimate weapon. With that height, Messi possessed an exceptionally low center of gravity. It allowed him to change direction at breathtaking speed and maintain extraordinary balance against aggressive challenges. The ball seemed glued to his magical left foot. The timid boy from the dressing room disappeared, replaced by a true monster every time he stepped onto the pitch. In 2004, at the age of 17, Messi officially made his debut for Barcelona's first team. There he was embraced by Ronaldinho, the world's biggest football star at the time. Instead of jealousy, the Brazilian magician carried Messi on his back after assisting his first professional goal. It was more than a celebration. It was the passing of the torch between two generations. Then, when Pep Guardiola arrived in 2008, a football revolution began. Pep recognized that Messi could not be confined to the wing. He moved him into a central role and gave birth to the false nine position. From that moment onward, Messi became the greatest nightmare for every defense in Europe. Together with Barcelona, Messi built a devastating dynasty, the unprecedented sextuple in 2009, glorious UEFA Champions League triumphs, and the pinnacle in 2012 when he scored 91 goals in a single calendar year, a record that may remain untouched for centuries to come. Messi continued to collect Ballon d'Or trophies, earning the admiration of the entire world. From a boy who had nearly been left disabled in Rosario, he climbed to the very summit of European football. But football is not a fairy tale painted only in bright colors. Just when Messi seemed to have everything, the crown upon his head began to weigh heavily under the suffocating pressure coming from his own homeland. There was a painful paradox. While the entire world bowed before Messi, people in Argentina viewed him with skepticism. The brighter his achievements at Barcelona shone, the more unbearable the pressure became with the national team. Argentinians revered Diego Maradona as a god, and they demanded that Messi become the next Maradona, a deity who would bring home the World Cup trophy. They forgot that Messi had left his homeland at the age of 13. Bitterly, they called him the Catalan, criticized him for not singing the national anthem, and accused him of giving everything to his club while keeping his selfishness for himself. Every time Messi wore the sky blue and white shirt, he was not merely football. He was carrying the expectations of more than 40 million people upon his shoulders. Then, the darkness of destiny arrived. In 2014, at the sacred Maracanã Stadium, Messi carried a struggling Argentina side all the way to the World Cup final. Yet, a single goal from Mario Götze in the 113th minute shattered his heart. The image of Messi standing motionless, staring blankly at the golden trophy he was not allowed to touch, became one of the most haunting pictures in football history. The trophy was right before his eyes, yet the distance felt as vast as a galaxy. The pain did not stop there. It transformed into a cruel curse. In 2015 and again in 2016, Argentina reached consecutive Copa America finals, only to lose both times in heartbreaking penalty shootouts against Chile. In the 2016 final, it was Messi himself who missed the first penalty. As the ball soared over the crossbar, it felt as though a monument had collapsed. After the match, Messi sat alone on the bench, burying his face in his hands and crying uncontrollably like a child. He was completely broken. The hormone injections he endured at the age of 11 had never hurt as much as the criticism coming from his own countrymen. That very night in New Jersey, in front of countless cameras, Messi tearfully declared, "It's over. The national team is not for me. I've tried so many times, but I just can't do it." Retiring from the national team at the age of 29, it was not an act of frustration, it was exhaustion. The uncrowned king chose to let go because the weight of that invisible crown had crushed his spirit. The world suddenly realized that even a genius could feel pain, and that the idol they admired was still a human being of flesh and blood, capable of bleeding from life's deepest wounds. But if the story had ended there, Messi would have remained only a great tragedy. Fortunately, destiny reserves its harshest trials for those most worthy of overcoming them. Messi's retirement announcement sent shockwaves across the nation. Argentina awoke. The people realized how cruel they had been to their son living abroad. From school children to the president of the country, everyone pleaded for him to return. And because of his pure love for the sky blue and white shirt, Messi decided to come back. He chose to rise from the ashes and face destiny once again. In 2021, the first turning point arrived. The Copa America final on Brazilian soil. This time, when the final whistle sounded, Argentina emerged victorious. Messi collapsed to his knees, covering his face with his hands, but these were no longer the bitter tears of 2016. They were tears of liberation. The curse had finally been broken. Messi had won his first major title with his homeland, yet the greatest throne of all still awaited him, the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. At the age of 35, when many footballers are already approaching the final stage of their careers, Messi entered the tournament with a completely different mindset. It was no longer about pressure, it was a dance with destiny. He scored in the group stage, the round of 16, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and then entered one of the most dramatic World Cup finals ever played against France. The match lasted 120 extraordinary minutes, with the score swinging back and forth like the plot of a Hollywood blockbuster. When Gonzalo Montiel converted the decisive penalty, it felt as though the entire world stopped turning. Messi turned around, smiled with relief, and fell to his knees on the Lusail pitch. His teammates rushed towards him and embraced him through tears. The moment Messi draped himself in the Qatari royal bisht, stepped onto the highest platform, and lifted the World Cup trophy, time itself seemed to stand still. The mockery disappeared, the doubts faded away. The shadow of Diego Maradona was finally behind him. With that trophy, Messi not only secured his place as the king of modern football, but also brought an end to a debate that had lasted for decades, becoming the GOAT, the greatest of all time. When the World Cup trophy was lifted in Qatar in 2022, everyone believed it was the perfect final chapter of an epic story. People assumed that having reached an age at which most global stars choose retirement or a quieter life, Lionel Messi would step aside and enjoy the sunset of his career. But genius never follows ordinary logic. Right now, at the 2026 World Cup, we are witnessing something extraordinary once again. The man wearing the number 10 shirt is still striding across the pitch, still leading Argentina as they fight to defend their world crown. Every run Messi makes at this tournament is no longer about proving anything to the world. It is a priceless gift from time itself, a privilege for everyone who loves the beautiful game. Looking at Messi in 2026 makes his journey even more remarkable. His true legacy does not lie in display cases filled with Ballon d'Or trophies, but in the timeless lesson of perseverance. Fate dealt him some of the worst possible cards: a frail and undernourished body, painful hormone injections every night from the age of 11, and tears of despair when his own homeland turned its back on him. Yet Messi transformed every one of those hardships into a source of everlasting strength. Today, on the far side of his career's peak, while many of his contemporaries have already retired, he remains standing. towering like a lighthouse, inspiring a new generation of teammates as they battle alongside him across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Messi's crown was not forged solely from glory. It was shaped through 3 decades of relentless perseverance. The journey from nightly injections in the darkness of Rosario to the final dance at the 2026 World Cup stands as the greatest proof of one simple truth. If you do not give up on your dreams will never give up on you. Let us continue to follow and cherish every moment of this living legend at this year's World Cup. If Lionel Messi's story has inspired you, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so that you can join us in following the King on this historic journey. For now, goodbye and see you next time.